The morning sun barely pierced through the heavy gray clouds, casting a dim light over the small village. A young woman woke to the sound of rain tapping against her window, a rhythm that mirrored the unease in her heart. Her life, once filled with vibrant dreams, had become a series of challenges that seemed to pile higher with each passing day. The crops in her family's fields were failing, the roof of their modest home leaked, and the weight of responsibilities pressed heavily on her shoulders. Yet within her burned a quiet determination, a spark that refused to be extinguished. She rose from her bed, her movements deliberate, and began her day. The fields needed tending, despite the relentless rain. As she stepped outside, the mud clung to her boots, each step a struggle against the earth's resistance. The crops, her family's lifeline, were wilting under the deluge. She could have surrendered to despair, letting the sight of the drooping stalks crush her spirit. Instead, she knelt beside them, her hands gently lifting the leaves, searching for any sign of resilience. She found a few stubborn plants, their roots clinging fiercely to the soil, and a faint smile crossed her face. In their defiance, she saw a reflection of her own heart. The village was quiet, the usual bustle silenced by the storm. She walked to the market, her basket empty but her mind racing with ideas. The other villagers, faces etched with worry, bartered what little they had. She had no goods to trade, no harvest to share, but she carried something else, a vision. She approached a corner of the market where broken tools and discarded scraps were piled. To others, it was worthless debris, but to her, it was possibility. She gathered pieces of wood, bent nails, and frayed rope, her hands moving with purpose. The villagers watched, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism, but she paid them no mind. Her focus was singular, to create something from nothing. Back at her home, she worked through the afternoon, her fingers deftly weaving the scraps into small, sturdy baskets. The rain continued to fall, seeping through the roof, but she positioned a bucket to catch the drips and kept working. Each basket she crafted was a testament to her refusal to let circumstances define her. She painted them with dyes made from crushed berries, adding touches of color that seemed to defy the grayness around her. By evening, her hands were stained and sore, but her heart felt lighter. She had turned waste into worth, a small victory in a world that felt increasingly heavy. The next day, she returned to the market, her basket stacked neatly in her arms. The villagers, still weary from the storm's toll, paused to look. The baskets were simple, but their vibrant hues stood out against the drab surroundings. She placed them on a worn cloth, arranging them with care. At first, no one approached. The weight of their own struggles kept them at a distance. But she remained patient, her posture steady, her eyes bright with quiet confidence. Slowly, a few villagers drifted closer. They touched the baskets, marveling at their sturdiness and the care woven into each one. Soon, barters were made, not for food or tools, but for hope. A woman traded a handful of seeds, another offered a skein of wool. The young woman accepted each trade, not for the value of the items, but for the connection they represented. Word of her basket spread, and over the days that followed, more villagers came. They brought their own scraps, their own broken pieces, and she taught them how to weave, how to create. The market corner, once a place of discarded things, became a hub of activity. Hands that had been idle now moved with purpose, crafting baskets, mats, and small trinkets. The rain still fell, the crops still struggled, but the village began to hum with a new energy. The young woman moved among them, her presence a quiet catalyst. She didn't speak much, but her actions were a language of their own, urging others to see beyond the storm. As the weeks passed, the village transformed. The baskets became a symbol, not just of survival, but of possibility. They were traded beyond the village, carried to distant markets, where their colors caught the eyes of strangers. The young woman's family, once on the brink of collapse, found stability. The seeds she had received were planted in small, sheltered patches, nurtured with care. Some sprouted, their green tips a promise of better days. The roof was patched, not with wealth, but with the collective effort of neighbors who had learned to see value in what they had. The young woman's heart, though, was her greatest creation. Where others saw failure, she saw opportunity. Where others saw loss, she saw lessons. The storms of life, she realized, were not just obstacles, but invitations to grow, to adapt, to create. She learned to find joy in small victories, the weight of a finished basket, the warmth of a shared smile, the sight of a single sprouting seed. These moments, fleeting as they were, fueled her. They taught her that positivity was not the absence of hardship, but the courage to find light in the darkest corners. The village, too, learned this lesson. The rain eventually eased, and the fields began to recover, but the true harvest was in the spirit of the people. They had faced a negative situation, one that could have broken them, and instead, they had built something new. The young woman, with her quiet determination and unyielding optimism, had shown them how. She didn't erase the storm, but she taught them to dance in the rain, to weave beauty from brokenness, to find strength in struggle. Years later, the village would tell stories of that time, not of the rain or the failing crops, but of the woman who turned scraps into treasures. Her baskets, though simple, became a reminder. Life's challenges were not the end, but the beginning of something new. The lesson she embodied, be positive in a negative situation, became the heartbeat of the village, a legacy woven into every creation, every step forward, every moment of resilience. And so, under skies that were sometimes gray, sometimes golden, the young woman continued her work. She tended her fields, wove her baskets, and nurtured her dreams. The world around her was imperfect, often unkind, but she faced it with a heart that refused to dim. In her hands, the ordinary became extraordinary, and in her spirit, the impossible became possible. Her life, like the baskets she crafted, was a testament to the power of seeing light where others saw only shadow.